all of our clients who are charged with fraud are just like any one of our other clients. They want to get their charges dropped. That's the first question. Is it possible to get these charges dropped? And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. And we do a significant amount of fraud, and we do minor frauds right up to very serious, large-scale, multi-million-dollar frauds involving thousands of pages of documents. And they run the full gamut, and people can be facing very minor sentence right up to multi-years in jail. And obviously, it's in their best interest if we can get the charge withdrawn or diverted or a conditional discharge of some fact to avoid a criminal record. So how do we do this? How do we go about getting any type of fraud charge withdrawn? The answer to that is, first of all, found whether we can do that is in the disclosure. The police obviously do an extensive investigation, and they produce documents and paperwork, search warrants of documents, bank records, you name it, depending on the fraud. And they turn all of those documents, whether it's 100 pages or whether it's 20,000 pages, over to the Crown Attorney. The Crown Attorney is then expected to get all of that disclosure to us. So it could be a minor fraud just of 100 pages of documents that we need to look at, witness statements, videos of witnesses, versus a very complicated high-level bank fraud involving high-level employees of the bank. So once I get that, I will review that. It might take me a day, it might take me a week, depending if there's thousands of documents, before I can form a tentative opinion about the strengths and weaknesses of the Crown's case. Once I've finished that process, and there may be missing disclosure, by the way, there's often missing disclosure where the Crown hasn't given me full disclosure. I write away for it, they send it. Maybe the police haven't turned it over to them, or maybe it hasn't occurred to them that there's other issues that need to be explored and given to me. Now I'm in a position to meet with the client. On a simple fraud case, that might be several meetings. On a complicated fraud case, it's going to be endless meetings, frankly, over weeks and weeks. I'm involved in fraud cases right now where the hours are just simply endless, like high-level cases. So what am I doing with the client? I'm providing them an opinion about whether we can win this case, what the odds of winning it are, and pointing out the problems in the case. Or, unfortunately, in some cases, I'm going to tell them, look, they've got the perfect paper trail here. They've got 10 witnesses against you. It's a slam dunk case. We have no chance of winning, and we just have to negotiate the best possible sentence for you, which is an art form too. We're here to lower that sentence. But I'm talking about a case where I can find some problems. A lot of fraud cases, as you can imagine, with paper trails, there can be gaps and issues where it doesn't necessarily point to your client, or it points to multiple accused. Fraud cases can be very complex. They're not necessarily easy to prove. And I'm going to find, and the lawyers are going to find the mistakes in a case that we can potentially point out to the Crown. So those meetings may be, on a very simple case, maybe 1 or 2 meetings with you on, again, high level. I'm going to need you to pour through those records and meet with you endlessly. I'm talking sometimes hundreds of hours on some big cases I've done. At the end of that process, I'm prepared to meet with the Crown at a Crown pretrial. So let's assume that I found some errors. Should I point those out to the Crown? Some technical issues. It depends. If it's an error that can be fixed, and I've repeated this in multiple videos, if the police or Crown can fix the error, and you got to know if they can or not, you need to be experienced. Never point it out to them, because you'd never want them to see that fixable error. They've missed it. It's within thousands of pages of documents. It's a hole in their case that they can fix. Don't point it out to them. But in many cases involving fraud, the errors can't be fixed. The police made serious errors. There's serious gaps that can't be fixed. I feel comfortable in those cases in pointing these out to the Crown and trying to convince them there's no reasonable prospect of conviction, or there's a very weak case. If there's no reasonable prospect of conviction, it's not in the public interest to continue, and you hope to be able to convince the Crown to simply withdraw the charges. That's in a perfect world. That's obviously a very weak case. There's other cases where there is a reasonable prospect of conviction, but it's weaker, and the Crown agrees with me. I pointed out the flaws that can't be fixed, and circumstantial case, identity, gaps, search warrants aren't valid, you name it. There's all sorts of issues that can arise in any fraud case where they can't prove it was really your client who committed a fraud. credibility and reliability issues with witnesses, the list goes on. So in that case, we're sometimes able to get the charges diverted. The Crown says, yeah, you know, this is a lower level fraud. I'm just going to divert it. Your client can do some counseling. When we get them to, even though he's claimed he didn't do the fraud, let's get them to pay the $10,000 restitution. Gladly, we'll pay that to get the charges withdrawn, even though we maintain we didn't do it. And maybe there's a peace bond so that the client can't attend at that bank or business or deal with that person anymore. That's a great result, especially on I hate to say it, especially on a higher level fraud where the person might have been facing a jail term, but the Crown recognized they got such a weak case that they're willing to divert it. There are other cases where, you know, the Crown's got a pretty decent case, client's got a great background. You know, the Crown could ask for a criminal record, but they're happy to resolve it because the risk of losing maybe some risk. Maybe we can wrestle a conditional discharge from which still avoids a criminal record. That's often a great result, especially when it's a risky matter to head to trial. And there's always risk in heading to trial. So for a client who's guilty, a conditional discharge is often a great result. And we have to negotiate with the Crown. We have to know what to say. There's an art form to negotiation, just like any negotiations, criminal law. A lot of criminal law is properly negotiating, presenting things, knowing what to say, when to say it, and knowing what not to say. I can't stress that enough. There are so many criminal lawyers across the province who I'm sure at one point in their career made the mistake of disclosing too much information to the Crown, which the police have corrected. So you've got to recognize that and resist that at all costs. So many of these cases are resolvable in a good fashion for the client. Obviously, there's many other cases where it's not. Sometimes the Crown on a high-level fraud, even when there's a reasonable chance of winning, we're just going to have a trial. It's 50-50. The Crown doesn't want to, they're not going to drop a charge when there's a multi-million-dollar fraud. But in lesser matters, matters under $5,000, you can often work something out where your client avoids a criminal record. Every case is different, but these are the tactics and strategies of how to get a charge drop. You need to find an experienced lawyer who's been there, done that, who's done many fraud trials, who knows what works and doesn't, and understands the law, and has the experience and the committed passion to do this stuff properly. That's the true thing to how to get a matter dropped or won at trial, is finding the right lawyer to defend you. Thank you for watching our video. We are absolutely committed to bringing you the best possible criminal and DUI educational videos. If you found this video helpful, please like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you've been charged with a criminal offense in Ontario and require our services, please click on the link in the description below.